Like sometimes you're on top of the world in this industry. Other times, like you feel like nobody wants to work with you. But you know what you can control? How you approach the job. What you can control is, do you try hard? Do you give a damn? Do you put effort into every show that you do? And I know you do writing wise, and that's definitely what I try to do. And not just sometimes better than others, but like that's the main goal is it's actually very funny. It's everything else and everything that we talk about in sports and just life in general. I try to be process oriented, committed to the process, and trust that the results and the success will come. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but it ain't going to change the process. We're going to keep on chopping no matter what, dude.
Bro, that was actually something I wanted to ask you, T-Bob. Do you approach the media business like you did in just the mentality preparation back with, like, is it the same kind of vibe going into this, just like you were going into a game?
It's not the it probably doesn't reach the height of emotion, but
of course.
But I definitely, the overall themes are the same, right? Like there's a million different Tommy Moffat quotes that I still kind of guide my life by, right? Prior preparation prevents poor performance. How bad do you want it? What are you willing to sacrifice to get it? There's just like, there's a million things that I could draw from there. Ultimately, though, this is less stressful and way more fun of a job. But that doesn't mean that you can just go in and just turn on the mics and think you're going to roll. I mean, my old man's been doing radio, obviously, for many, many, many years at this point, and he preps like none other. I used to do like a 2-to-1 prep ratio, twice the amount of time for every hour that I was on air. Next thing you know, you get 3 kids. It's a little crazier. We're probably down to 1-to-1 now. But the bottom line is you can't go half stepping into it. Otherwise, people are going to know, and it's going to it's going to show for sure. But this is a fun gig, man. I'm lucky. Nobody is obsessed with their job, right? Like everybody's going to have complaints, things that you wish you were better. But I do think that I'm very lucky in that I really like my job for the most part. I've had one day in my professional career. You have days where you don't want to work, but I've had one day where I was really like, I hate this. I don't want to be here. I have no desire to do this. And I'm thinking like, if that's only one day in like 11 years, then yeah, you're pretty lucky. You're doing pretty well.
Absolutely. I'd say, and T-Bob, I think you're probably the only man in sports media who could have humanized Aaron Murray for me. Like thank you. I mean, like that guy is awesome. That guy is awesome.
But that was my expectation with Aaron too, because I didn't put us together. Like I never knew him. And when we were doing, because that show Snaps was originally, by the way, everybody should check out Snaps podcast. Just Google Snaps College Football or Snaps CFP. But
links in the description right now as we speak.
Oh hell yeah, right on, dude. But no, the volume put us together, which is Cowherd's podcast outfit, and I didn't know what to expect. I mean, all I knew about Aaron was he banged one of my best friend's girlfriends in college. And so he was always an enemy of the friend group. And come to find out, he's awesome. I love that dude. I absolutely love that dude. And he's super chill, super fun. And we're not the same. Like he's not a giant partier, right? He's a bit degenerate, but not in a partying sense. But no, getting to know Aaron, because like Aaron humanized Aaron for me. I'm with you, Lon. Like I kind of felt the same thing before. You never know with these quarterbacks. They can be very hard to connect with at times. They can be very uptight. None of that is Aaron Murray.
No, man. And the Snap show is awesome. I really dove headfirst in that because it was like, oh, this is a cool new venture that you're trying. I want to support this. But it's not just because you're on it. It's a really good show. And I must say, T-Bob, I really want to thank you publicly. Just how much you've supported us over the years. Like, it all started with you retweeting an article that I wrote right after
Post Oklahoma.
Yes.
Because I remember that exact line. The Oklahoma players walking off the field, shaking their heads. It was like as if it wasn't even fair or something. And I was like, that is actually like so true. in terms of what happened. I mean, it was like, it wasn't fair. This was supposed to be a college football playoff, and yet these Oklahoma players were just completely dejected.
And the best part was Patrick Queen, Joe Burrow, like publicly declared this is what will happen, and then did just that. It was absolutely, the swagger was off the hook. But like, bro, I was working.
What is up, everybody?
At a Dell IT office building, and you
LSU
tweeted that. I'm watching
Odyssey
your show every morning.
Live.
We're so psyched about what's about
in the house,
what's about to come, what's
on
about
a Friday
to be consecrated by this 2019 team. I want you to know,
been a very,
it literally spurred us on to thinking that this little like writing
week.
thing could, and this whatever.
Maybe that's more felt by us because of what's gone on behind the scenes and things like that. But there's been some good stuff going on for LSU Odyssey. So things have been looking up for us, but also things have been looking up very, very, very well for LSU football. My God. And we talked about this on our midweek show. Talked about this at the end of the show, really wrapped up the show with this type of commentary from Jordy Collada, who was our special guest this past week. And we talked about just how LSU, they were dominating the transfer portal. They had seemed to turn the corner on the NIL, but now they're just adding to the hires. They're just getting even more sexy hires on the staff, looking just vampirically active in the portal, going after the top coaches. I mean, it has looked really good from a fan perspective, from a media perspective, from whatever perspective you want to throw out. What LSU is doing right now, not only with the 2024 winter portal, but also adding to that coaching staff that was already really damn good coaching staff. Maybe didn't have the best of seasons, got exposed in that 3-game losing streak. Whatever you want to say, that's a dream staff that Brian Kelly has assembled at LSU. I will die on that hill when you are talking about Bo Davis coaching your defensive line, Brad Davis coaching your offensive line, Cortez Hankton coaching your receivers, Joe Sloan, your offensive coordinator / quarterbacks. You've now brought out in Alex Atkins to coach the tight ends and really assist Joe Sloan in that running game more than anything, which is what he did successfully at Florida State over the last 3 years. You really, Corey Raymond, a defensive back coach, Jake Olson at safeties is probably one of the most unsung guys on the staff that isn't really going to get the love, and maybe he hasn't earned that love yet. He's still a young coach, really hasn't done much coaching at the top level as far as like not just an analyst, but an assistant, an on-field assistant. So maybe he is yet to earn those stripes, but you got Kevin Peoples, who was a Broyles Award semifinalist, I believe, or finalist, as an edge rushing coach. That tells you how damn good he is at what he does. How many times do you hear about an edge rushing coach being nominated for an award? Pretty awesome there. So you've got a ridiculously stacked staff once again for LSU, and it has shades, dare I say it, of some of the staffs LSU has put together when we have competed for or won national championships. You've got Brian Kelly, Frank Wilson. Brian Kelly, Frank Wilson running the show. Frank Wilson is a assistant head coach, running backs coach. Cortez Hankton, co-OC receivers. Joe Sloan, co-OC quarterbacks. You've got Brad Davis, the number one offensive line recruiter and developer in the country, coaching your offensive line. I get it. Maybe Brad Davis's Achilles heel is run blocking and getting guys to be like the absolute best at run blocking, especially when he's got a poor scheme and all that stuff. Maybe that's where he's an Achilles heel, if you can call it that. Kind of ridiculous. But still, all in all, that's probably your number one offensive line coach in the country, Brad Davis. And then Bo Davis, I mean, it's very interesting to hear some of the opinions on him change when he has maximized so much at LSU when he had so little to work with at the defensive line, defensive tackle position especially. And he loses the guy he's supposed to build it all from, Jacobian Guillory, against Nichols in week 2. And you've literally got Gio Paez, JVR Suggs, and then 2 freshmen, Ahmad Brow, Dominic McKinley. And that's what Bo Davis went with. Maximize the hell out of that. And that dude, if you give him absolute gold from the defensive line perspective, which is what I don't think we got enough of these guys. I think we should have gotten a few more defensive tackles in the portal, and we'll still probably likely do that. I know we're getting Jacobian Guillory back, but still, you need to stock that position. It wasn't stocked up. You only got a few guys, Sydir Mitchell, to play defensive tackle next season. You have 2 great freshmen in Dominic McKinley and Ahmad Brow, but still, you want to kind of like get Jacobian Guillory up to speed, but not like wear him into the ground immediately. You want him to play the full season healthy. You don't want him getting hurt quickly. You want to be able to minimize or at least manage his snaps when you can the first few weeks of the season. I know we start the season against Clemson, but you've got to minimize this guy's snaps so he can play the full year. You're going to need to rely on other guys. Sydir Mitchell was not enough for me out of the portal, but still, hopefully we can get a few more guys in spring, but I think this is mostly who LSU are going to be going with at the defensive tackle position. So once again, perhaps another worry there at defensive tackle. But they more than make up for it at defensive end and edge rusher. Wow. Patrick Payton arrives through the portal. Jack Pyburn from Florida arrives through the portal. Jameer Butler arrives through the portal. All edge rushers that are just dynamite edge rushing talent. And I guess you could really just say pass rushing talent, because from the film that I was watching of these guys, I hate just using the term edge rusher because it gets kind of a certain feeling for some of the fans, where if they're not too like football film or played the game, inclined, they're just going to expect this guy like, making moves on the edge, trying to beat the left tackle, and it's like never having the body to stunt inside, that type of stuff. That's really what I want to avoid when talking about these guys, because you can rush Patrick Payton from anywhere. Jack Pyburn, I think, could even evolve into being a linebacker offensive lineman if you wanted him. And here's Patrick Payton right there making disgusting plays. And look at that. Lineman, and it will be alarming to the offensive lineman. Would you say that? It will be alarming to the offensive. Technically, you could say he's on the edge right there, but he's basically a defensive end right there. Inside a 3-man front right there with 2 guys on the outside. That's. It will be alarming to the offensive lineman. Defense, whatever you want to say. Trying to get outside his Barfield. Whatever position, whatever gap, whatever. By Patrick Payton. That's through the teeth of the defense.
He is twitchy. He's got speed and good feel here. as he's going to get up the field and get the tackle for a loss.
And that's the
Excellent
thing. He's got
job.
the length to finish
9
those
for his
plays
last
off,
9.
which is what LSU lacked this last year.
Flush from
We
the
had guys who
pocket
could
and
get there. We had
by
guys who
Patrick
could really
Payton.
get close to making some great plays.
And now neither team will use the
Lacked
timeout.
that
Lost
little
the
bit
7
of
on the
something to get guys on the ground.
10th play of the
4.5 sacks
possession.
from Savion Jones.
They bring pressure.
That is nowhere near that young man's level. And he had 2 of those against USC in one.
Norvell will use his first timeout.
He really.
3rd down and 7.
I expect Savion Jones to be a player who excels more and more in the NFL than he ever did at LSU.
Disappeared for Griffiths as he is sacked.
The point is
by Tatum Bethune.
Well, you say, hey, who got that sack? It's like, well, the whole defensive line. They decided to have a defensive team meeting there. So that's what they're trying to accomplish with the slow
and I think Patrick Payton is that something when you've got length, you've got versatility, someone who can, I can only attack on the edge.
Now it's 3rd down.
I can only do this.
Yeah, you talk about, hey, how do you stop the slow mesh? How do you stop any run game? Well, it's called penetration by the defensive line.
21-0 in the second half.
Drop me into coverage even. I have the length to make plays against the pass.
Griffiths on the move.
I don't even have to make the sacks. Look at that. Flushing the guy wide. And then finishes him all the way to the outside. He doesn't let that guy cut upfield.
Runs to the
somehow
sideline.
Get a few more yards. He doesn't know
Gets
that.
Bumped out of bounds.
Just a brilliant play. And so you've got these guys who are very impressive at the edge position. You've got some big worries at safety, though. Yes, you brought in Tamarcus Cooley. Is he going to be the star? Is he going to be a safety? Where is Tamarcus Cooley going to play? I love that you picked up Tamarcus Cooley. I'm not saying I'm being down on him. I was the one who broke that news. This site is the one that was like, hey, Tamarcus Cooley. We got to get this guy. From the get-go, that's a dude that you have that I'm really high on, okay? But I'm just saying we needed more than just one dude at the back. You need a tandem of greatness back there. So is that going to be Javian Toviano next to him? Who's that going to be next to Tamarcus Cooley? Because that's who I really want to know. That's going to be interesting to me. We know Tamarcus Cooley has the talent. Is it going to be Javian Toviano? Finally goes back to safety after playing corner, off the bench playing nickel last year. All this, not really finding a good home. Is Toviano that answer? You saw him finish the season pretty well, but he simply just did not play this last season due to the legal reasons. I'm guessing from the first part of the season, but Tamarcus Cooley at the back, but who's going to be partnering with him? Is that Toviano? I mean, there's so many guys that we lost due to the transfer portal this offseason. When you're talking about Kylan Jackson, we wasted 2 years of that kid's eligibility without even finding out if he could really play for LSU, which is really a damn shame when you're talking about a local kid. Kylan Jackson, there's a few other guys. Ryan Yates over the last few years. Jordan Allen, another guy we played, but just didn't really commit to and just kind of like meh, and let him transfer. There was a few guys at the safety position that I never really felt like we gave the opportunities because we were too obsessive with playing, Major Burns every snap of every game. It made no sense. Is it going to be Deshaun Spears at the back? That's a young dude who's highly talented, has the length to make plays in the passing game. He could be that free safety. You could make Tamarcus Cooley kind of that hybrid strong, strong/free, and then go with a 3-man linebacking core, I guess more of like a 2-man linebacking core with Weeks and Devon Keys, and then have Harold Perkins as your star. That would be interesting to me. Lance Guidry, that's a dude who is hired to make Harold Perkins that superstar at the star position, in my opinion. I haven't been able to confirm that just yet, But that is just my sneaking suspicion that they're like, this guy is going to know. In this interview process, they found out he's going to know how to use Harold Perkins at that start position. So Blake Baker leading the show. You've added Lance Guidry as an analyst on the defensive side. It looks like it should get better than last year. And if you had this defense with the 2023 offense, Jaden Daniels and those guys are winning a championship last year. I mean in 2023. So it's not to say last year's defense was terrible or anything, but we had a ton of injuries, a ton of key injuries. You get some of those guys back in Perkins and Guillory, but you've lost a lot of depth in some areas. And I don't feel we've ever really made up for it either through the portal or even recruiting-wise. Yes, the 2025 class has some superstars coming in. DJ Pickett likely going to be a opposite Mansour Delane as a day one starter for the Tigers at corner. Ashton Stamps, 9 pass breakups, was 6th in the SEC this last year. Didn't get an interception, got burned for 3 touchdowns and some big plays. Very much a developmental, thrown into the fire type of year. But I feel like that kid kind of deserves an opportunity at least to show whether he's going to make or break in year 3, you know? I feel like he at least kept the dam from completely, you know, he kept his finger in the hole of the dam, you know what I'm saying? Like he literally kept it from going to complete shit. No one can tell me that the coverage in 2024 was worse or even close to as bad as it was in 2023. It's not even on the same planet, okay? But this is a defense that still can and must improve to help Garrett Nussmeier. But for me, Garrett Nussmeier and this offense is really Joe Sloan, his development as an offensive coordinator, offensive play caller in year 2. That, for me, is really where the story lies for this season. That's where the story lies for this season. What are they going to do on offense? Is this going to be Garrett Nussmeier throwing for 40 touchdowns and over 4,000 yards and really putting up numbers, but 20-something picks, a bunch of attempts, and a disjointed offense that really just only relies on the passing game? No balance. You can't run the football. I really do believe, even though LSU has lost, you look at it on paper, LSU has lost a ton of talent going into 2025, just like we did last year. But you'll lose 4 of your 5 offensive line starters, which is really where the portal. You've really got to go get some guys in the portal to just make up the numbers offensive line wise. But you really needed some strong veterans from the offensive line in the portal, and you did not get that. You're going to be relying on young guys. You're going to be bleeding young guys in on your offensive line in this season. That's intense. So Garrett Nussmeier is going to have that to contend with. But Brian Kelly, Austin Thomas, these guys, they went out into the portal and they got some absolute weapons for Garrett Nussmeier to throw the football to. You're talking about an offense that already had Chris Hilton Jr. and Aaron Anderson returning. That's a damn good tandem there. You got Trey'Dez Green coming into his own. Okay, that's a great trio to work with. Add Nick Anderson, the number 1 transfer receiver in the country, and then Berrien Brown, a top 5 transfer receiver in the country, who really should have been number 2 or arguably number 1 as well. This dude is a freak. Not only what he can do receiving the football, former Kentucky receiver, but what he can do returning the football in special teams. You also have Xavion Thomas in the receiving corps, Kyle Parker. It's a dynamic, unbelievable receiving corps. You've got Donovan Green and Bauer. I almost called him Jack Bauer. I almost called Bauer Sharp Jack Bauer. LSU's 2 new tight ends as well who can help in the blocking schemes, as well as Donovan Green helping in the passing game. So you could literally roll with 12 personnel with this offense, with what we've got personnel-wise. You could roll with 5-man wideouts that I would be terrified to be calling plays against as a defensive coordinator, as a secondary coach. I would be scared shitless to, Nick Anderson, Aaron Anderson in the slot, Tradez Green already unguardable. Then you got Chris Hilton Jr. downfield threat. And then you got Barry and Brent. Like, how the hell are you going to stop that? How the hell are you going to stop that? So Garrett Nussmeier, we already know can make the throws. Garrett Nussmeier, we already know is an unrivaled leader, really. This kid is – we always knew he had moxie. We always knew he had, cojones. We always knew he had the talent. But, man, he's putting it all together. And the best part is you've got to be surrounded by greatness, and you've got to have timing on your side. He's got both. He's got another full season at LSU. It feels like he's already been there for a decade. He's got the same continuity with Joe Sloan there returning. Just why the people arguing for Joe Sloan to be axed are just fools, I got to say. It's a very interesting prospect for LSU because I didn't even bring up Caden Durham at running back either. You got a superstar at running back. Caleb Jackson should be pissed off about this last year, not really getting the ball. He should be wanting to prove something this year. You got Harlem Berry in that backfield too, freshman Harlem Berry, possibly Trey Holly coming back from legal trouble. You've got some impressive running backs as well. So I mean, this is an offense littered with weapons. Littered with weapons. I don't know if they can survive key injuries, though, especially to offensive linemen. But, Caden Durham goes down. Your running back room looks very different. The guys behind him, can they carry a game? Can they carry the running game for a whole season? Maybe our view on the whole thing changes once we see how damn good Alex Atkins is in his role at LSU, because that's a hire that you've got to think is just a beautiful, beautiful, sexy hire. This guy, former, assistant head coach, O-line coach at Tulane. This guy was a GA coach at Marshall. O-line coach at Georgia Southern, at Chattanooga, Charlotte, which I saw as it said 49ers. I'm like, whoa, he coached in the NFL? Whoa. And it was like Charlotte 49ers. I'm like, oh, okay. But then from 2020 to 2024, he was at Florida State. So he wasn't just a coach who just bounced around. He was committed for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons at Florida State. 5 seasons at Florida State, coaching O-line to offensive coordinator / O-line coach for the last 3 full seasons at Florida State. So, he was let go after, the 1-9 debacle this last year. But Alex Atkins, man, this dude, I just have a very good feeling about what Brian Kelly is doing hiring-wise and what that could mean for the program when you're talking about really good coaches like a Kevin Peoples coaching your edge guys, an Alex Atkins coaching your running game. You really take their specific greatness and put it on a microscope and really just see what is possible there. And what is possible when you maximize their best attributes as a coach in these specific areas of the team. It's very, no responsibilities going elsewhere. It's very exciting. is LSU, is Brian Kelly. Are they ready for a title run in 2025? I mean, it's very, very interesting. Stan, thank you so much for those kind words. I actually felt like we took more time off this offseason than ever before. So I feel like, I mean, I feel like we were actually taking more of a back seat because there's some health stuff I'm dealing with that, despite some of my best pursuits, I just I was not feeling good health wise, like to the point where writing articles and things like that was like probably not even possible. I was just like, but got kind of over that and got back in the flow of things. So I feel like we actually didn't do that much this off season. But then I go back and I look, and we probably wrote like 2 articles every couple of days where there's at least 2 or 3 things on there. So I mean, we at least tried to continue covering it and trying to really do it like we've done every other season, trying to get the sources, trying to get to the heart of the thing. But maybe just from my own perspective, it felt like we didn't really do that much this offseason as much as usual. Maybe that's just because we didn't break as much news, but I mean, I guess we still did if we go back and look. But I usually don't really think about these things. I just go and go and go and go. So I'm the last person to ask about those type of things. But thank you so much, Stan, for your kind words. And Cordell Music says he is. I think you're saying he is, as far as Brian Kelly being ready for a 2025 title run. I love it. I love it. Yes. He's answering the question. Will Brian Kelly and company be ready for a title run in 2025? That's the question we ask. That's the question we're asking. Because the pieces have been put together in such a sexy manner that it makes me have to say, this has to happen. You saw a 2-loss, no one talking about this dead-ass Ohio State team winning a national championship last year. You're telling me that couldn't have been LSU? Actually, we should be pissed off it wasn't. Like, let's get real here. LSU screwed the pooch. LSU threw away a massive opportunity. We should have won the national championship last year. We lost to a 4-5 when they played us, a 4-5 Florida team that had a hurt true freshman starter who outplayed us. Incredible. We lost to that team. We let Kalen DeBoer in his first year shitting his pants as Alabama coach, losing 3-4 games? What was it? 4 games? Yeah. Getting annihilated. Getting disturbed and destroyed by Michigan in a bowl game. And yet we let Landry and his counterfeit tiger come into the stadium, make it distract everybody, make it crazy, make it nuts. I know this for a fact because I talked to the players. They told me that tiger distracted the damn team, at least in a little bit, to where players were saying, I want to see this tiger, And then they were looking for it when they came out. But the players didn't see it because they had taken the tiger away. But then some said, I saw the tiger. I at least got to see the tiger. And it was a confusing thing. They wanted to see the tiger. Some didn't. Some thought it was. And that's just a stupid distraction. Conversations that shouldn't be had. You should be talking about how you're going to dominate and bend Kalen DeBoer's ass on your field. But that's what that tiger controversy caused. All of these things. You lose to Texas A&M because you could not account for Marcel Reed. I mean, then again, when we did our special guest on Tiger Rag, we did a guest appearance on Tiger Rag Radio with Glenn Gilboa and Jeff Palermo and those guys. We were saying Connor Wegman's terrible. This defense is going to swallow him up, and I don't know how LSU can lose this game. And guess what? We were right, because LSU were destroying them. LSU was eating Connor Wegman alive, but we were unprepared because we hated A&M so much that we were like, we'll just barely watch them up to this level or to this thing. And we didn't look into everything. We didn't see that they saw when Connor Wegman wasn't doing it for him, and they would have no problem going to a Marcel Reed. If I had known that, I would have said on the program, yeah, but if they go to Marcel Reed, we could get roasted, because that's been a recurring theme of our show that we've talked about for going on a few years now, is that LSU's defenses cannot handle dual threat quarterbacks. And we've seen it too many times, especially in big games against big-time opponents, and it's why LSU has been away from championship contention since 2019. Even in 2019, we had trouble with some of them. Jared Addison says he better be, as far as Brian Kelly. And then this is very interesting. We literally just talked about this. Jared Addison says, as long as they can stop a running quarterback, we're okay on defense. Here's the thing. You have Harold Perkins. You have the type of speed we've now got on the edges and at corner. To Marcus Cooley. You have no excuses not to stop a running quarterback. I don't think you had him before, but remember, we had Major Burns at safety. Andre Sam at safety. Okay? I'm not trying to crap on guys. They could kick my ass in a second, break me with their hands. You know, like, those guys did things for LSU I can only dream of. But the truth is, Major Burns allowed 9 receiving touchdowns over the last 2 years. 9 receiving touchdowns over the last 2 years. There was a lot of big-time missed tackles in space by him. There was a lot of big-time just missed plays where he had no clue what was going on. And I know people like to crap on Sage Ryan, who left to go to Ole Miss. He was one of our better playing guys over the last few years at the back. And he made some big-time boneheaded plays and mistakes too. But the secondary, man, that's where we must get better from all over the place. And I just feel like the coaching standpoint, you bring in Lance Guidry, you've got Corey Raymond already there, Jake Olson. I mean, you don't need to have Ronnie Lott. I mean, this is a trio that should be able to have our safeties produce good plays, at least be able to be in the right spots to make the plays. And that's the thing is, last year, I think for the first time in a while, you saw safeties that were in position to make plays. Whereas before, the whole schematics would just be terrible under Matt House, Bo Pelini. In 2021, I can't even remember who the hell was coaching safeties for that team, but it was god awful what was going on. It was the defensive coordinator, who Durante Jones, who wasn't even really the defensive coordinator. It was Coach O, who was the defensive coordinator of that team. So you had a whole mix of signals. You can't even really credit who that defense was to, except for Coach O, I guess, for most of the season. But when Durante Jones got back hold of that defense, we held Alabama, number 1 Alabama, to 6 rushing yards and 20 points and nearly beat them on the road. We're an absolutely awesome defense the second Durante Jones took over. I remember that. It was very interesting. But really, it's all about secondary play to me. When you've got such a damn good front 7, I have no problems with that front 7. I could go into any game with that front 7 and the backups, you know, especially at linebacker position on the edges. Defensive end, you love what you've got. Defensive tackle, I love the young guys. I love Guillory. We cannot afford any injuries. We're so thin there. It's really more this year. It's stay healthy defensively, okay? But offensively, you have to attack, you have to evolve, and you really have to take that next step all over the place. And offensive line is where it all starts. We know they're going to have weapons. We know Nussmeier's going to have stats, some crazy stats. These guys are going to put up yards and touchdowns, right? But is it going to be a bunch of empty plays because we lose games? We cannot protect Nuss at the end of games. We cannot protect Nuss when it matters most. We saw that last year. We saw Mubenga get blasted. We saw an early preview of what is to come in 2025 if we're going to have a Paul Mubenga, DJ Chester at center and guard combination there. You no longer have Miles Frazier, no Garrett Dellinger, no Will Campbell, no Emory Jones. You've brought in Josh Thompson. You brought in Braylon Moore. And if you're still going to go with Chester at center, you could have Braylon Moore at one of the other guard spots. Bo Bordelon, he's looked pretty damn good at the guard spots. Weston Davis is likely going to be in contention for right or left tackle. Tyree Adams, who started the game against Baylor, is likely going to be a day one starter at one of these tackle positions. But LSU still needed more for the offensive line. Cohen Eccles is a guy you could play at various positions from center even. He was practicing as the second string, third string center, with Garrett Dellinger being the second string center last year. LSU technically only had one real center last year. I for some weird reason, I always come around to mentioning that every episode because it's just unbelievable to me that we went into the season like that and somehow survived. So when people are like, DJ Chester was terrible, blah, blah, I'm like, thank God he didn't get hurt, though. People always look at me weird. But the offensive line, man, is where it all begins for me. We have to kill it on the offensive line here. We have to get this right. It's more about chemistry than some type of depth problem because we've got a bunch of guys. There's a bunch of guys. There's a bunch of great young freshmen. There's a bunch of badass guys you've never even heard of who are now entering that year two as redshirt freshmen or sophomores who barely even played the last few years because of how solid that front five was for LSU. Even though you had Charles Turner for 2 years and then DJ Chester, still mostly that same front five, front four. It was so consistent. Not anymore. Josh Thompson, Braylon Moore are going to have to provide big time help and support to that offensive line in different positions. And I don't think the immediate thing you do is hey, DJ Chester, boom, get you out of the center position. Because then what else can he do for you? Not much. So maybe see if he can develop and take that next level at the center position. We've seen DJ Chester play well at the center position. We haven't seen him become an SEC level starting powerhouse center. We haven't seen that happen yet. He has needed a ton of help. But some of the other guys that we haven't mentioned, Kyrie Lee, this guy is a very physical guy up front, but I haven't really seen him take that next step, whether it was in fall camp or at any other time over the season when he had very limited snaps. Kimo Machianoli, this guy went back and forth from defensive tackle to offensive line, and then finally they just said, let's transfer you out of here. So he's no longer there. You got Paul Mubenga. He gave up a ton of sacks and pressures, got bullied. during that 3-game losing stretch against A&M. He was Garrett Dellinger's replacement in that A&M game, Alabama, Florida. But then he made big-time improvements against Oklahoma and Baylor and really took a very promising turn. I mean, this kid is getting killed. This kid was getting killed by everyone in the media, everyone in the fan base, everyone online was just killing this kid. Knowing that that's going on, that type of stuff's being said, and he grinded and dug his way out of it, you have to be impressed. And I think it would be an awesome story if Mubenga could become a starter for LSU this year. I would be all for it. Ethan Callaway, offensive tackle, 6'7", 315. We barely saw him. Is he too much of a nice guy? Is he just not mean enough to play for a Brad Davis offensive line? That's something I've always wondered about Ethan Callaway, because he's a very good technical offensive lineman. He just doesn't have the physicality and aggression to maybe compete at the SEC level. That's something I've got to see from him. Weston Davis, I love this kid. I love what I see from him. I would be shocked if he does not get a chance to compete for that starting position at either tackle spot. I would be shocked if he's not a part of that starting 5 for next year, to be honest. He's that good, and I feel like maybe not he's earned the opportunity, he's earned a starting position, none of that, but his pedigree is so damn good. It would shock me if he wasn't there, because he's really earned a lot of plaudits throughout his high school career, and a lot of big time plays over spring and fall camp that caught the eye of the coaches at LSU and really like, this kid is damn good, and maybe that's why, you had Emory Jones, you had Will Campbell. There's no need to rush this kid into games and whatever, but he has been that project. Now you're going to see him kind of unleashed out there. Christian Stamps. This is Ashton Stamps' brother, I believe. This kid, I feel he maybe doesn't have the technicality. We just talked about this about Ethan Callaway. Maybe he doesn't have the technicality of a Callaway, but he's got that SEC aggression and that SEC physicality. Christian Stamps. Christian Stamps, you can play him at a few different spots, mostly interior. This dude, you've seen him at tackle too, so it's kind of hard to say either way. He is very interesting for me. Ori Williams, Cohen Eccles. You've got some guys there. You've got some fantastic offensive linemen. But can they play? I mean, just being a fantastically talented, technically proficient offensive lineman who was a 4-star, 5-star in high school doesn't mean that you can start for LSU in the SEC. When we're trying to find an offensive line that can keep this quarterback whole, this guy who could – he just showed you a glimmer of what he could be with a leaky offensive line, with barely any run game. You had a freshman starting as your running back with one of the lowest performing receiving corps in LSU's recent history. And you saw a very disjointed offensive play calling, arrhythmic offensive play calling. All of it was disjointed, and you still saw Garrett Nussmeier have the second greatest passing season in LSU history, topping Jaden Daniels from 2023. He just showed you that while going through all of that crap. So my point is, you've surrounded him with the weapons. You get the play calling together with Joe Sloan, Alex Atkins. You really kind of grind this together and figure this out running game wise. Cortez Hankton working with those guys as well for the passing game side of this. And then it's really all about getting these guys in the right position, not getting caught up in politics and who was your favorite, really letting the best guys play, putting them in the best positions, not the position you think they should play, but the position they should play. And Harold Perkins, for instance, is he a linebacker? No, he's a star in this defense. put him in the star position. Put him, hell, wherever you put him, just put him in space away off of the line and let him just attack. You know, let him read the game. God, you can hear Sagey coughing from the other room. Sage is a little congested or worried. We don't want him we don't want him to get sick. It's really cold. We've been trying to keep him inside, which is a job in and of itself. Jared Addison, I went to the you went to that 2021 Bama game. Max Johnson's pass wasn't a little high. We beat them. Jack Besh was wide open. Wide open. And he missed him. Jared Addison says, Nuss gets as much credit for the line as they did. Nuss got rid of the ball quick and was pretty escapable. Yeah, I mean, like he will improve in that type of stuff as well, so that's going to help the offensive line. And that's going to help the offense cover up some cracks. But it's hard for me to say LSU's offense is going to improve losing Will Campbell, Emory Jones. I think you had a huge plus in the wide receiver category. You just lost LSU's all-time leading tight end in yards and receptions, Mason Taylor, an absolute LSU legend forever. And you just lost him, and instead of it being a downgrade, you got Donovan Green, you got Bauer Sharp, and you've got Trey'Dez Green. You've got three dudes who are absolute studs for different reasons. That is very impressive to me. With every question about this 2025 team, every hole on the roster, every place that was deficient on the staff or in the play calling or in the coaching, Brian Kelly has answered those questions, has checked those boxes. He has made those decisions. He has changed those situations, turned it around in LSU's favor. You know, running game sucked last year. You bring in Alex Adkins to help Frank Wilson, help Joe Sloan, you know, and then he's going to be working with the tight ends as well. Huge win across the board. Huge win across the board. Joe Sloan, you're going to see a lot of growth from him in year two, I believe. Him and Cortez Hankton working together, you would think you would see that. And that's the thing that's really, I'm going to tell you guys this right now. I'm going to remind you this a lot over the course of this offseason. Despite what you see this offseason, we cannot judge this team until we see them actually play games, not lose in week one. You know, these type of things like that. We can't get carried away, is my point. Because we don't see the play calling until the season, really. You see some stuff. You see some flavors of what they're going to be. And you hear them say a lot of these quotes in the media and stuff about, oh, we're going to be this type of team. We're going to do this. How many times do you see that just blow up in coaches' faces or never happen or, you know, et cetera upon et cetera? It happens a lot. So for me, it's LSU in 2025 have a big mission here. If you're going to win a national championship, you have to be able to remain healthy on defense, and they're going to compete their asses off. Remain healthy on defense because you're thin in some big spots: safety, defensive tackle, corner. You got to remain healthy, okay? On offense, you've got to take that next step. You've got to take that next step. You have to become a more explosive a more intense, a more creative offense in this season with the weapons you've got, with the quarterback at your disposal. That should be easy. The worry is the offensive line up front, as we just went into. And the worry is also, maybe just not having a chemistry among the squad because some guys are maybe a lack of familiarity. I don't think these things will be an issue, though. I think LSU are going to know exactly. Brian Kelly's going to think exactly, here's how we're going to solve this issue. We're going to get this guy, acclimated quickly because we're going to need him big time down the stretch this year. There's going to be those conversations. And that type of stuff, it's happening right now. It's a very exciting time. This is when the seeds for a championship are sown right now. And really, you've seen it all this offseason, what Brian Kelly has put together staff-wise, squad-wise. You lost a lot of talent. You lost a lot of great players. You lost, maybe some depth, but you added some absolutely empirical elite pieces to the transfer portal. And what you did with the coaching staff, it might be exactly what LSU has been missing to win a national championship. Is Brian Kelly ready for a national championship run? Will Brian Kelly and company go on a title run in 2025? That's the question I want you to answer for us. That's the question we have been trying to answer this entire show. And I think the answer is clearly yes. And if for some weird reason this team does not go on a title run or get there are some significant questions that not only must be asked, they must be answered. Because there would be significant problems at LSU because everything is there to be a dynamo this season in 2025 for LSU football. I'm not guaranteeing a national championship. I'm saying this is a team that, given the modern college football landscape, given the leeway, the ability to lose a few games and still get in there, there is no excuse. There is no reason that Brian Kelly and LSU should not be competing for a national championship in 2025. And I fully expect, unless, Bill Pullman becomes president and the aliens come, from up high and Randy Quaid is flying his plane into the mothership, all this type of crazy shit's going on. Unless that happens, I expect LSU to compete for a national championship in 2025.